on this. Okay, thanks you guys for patience. Hey Renzo, I am making you host again.
Okay.
Okay.
Sweet. Can everyone see my screen? Alrighty, I will jump right in. Good morning, everyone. Thanks again for having me. Renzo Meza, Outreach Manager here at the Oregon State Treasury, and hoping to use a few minutes this morning to chat with you all about OregonSaves. We have a pretty important deadline coming up, and so we're very keen on making sure that small businesses around the state know of this deadline, understand the OregonSaves program, have an opportunity to ask questions, and just generally speaking, feel comfortable and familiar with the program. So with that, yeah, I'm going to just begin with a quick program overview, and then really where I'm hoping what I'll spend the second half of time on is really just kind of walking you through what the registration process and facilitation process looks like, just so that you feel comfortable using the program and can sort of anticipate any hurdles you might have in the registration, if any, and can just ask questions along that. So I want to begin with just kind of answering the question, what is OregonSaves? So simply put, OregonSaves is a retirement savings program. It is administered by the state of Oregon and was created with the intention of making sure every Oregonian is able to save for retirement in the workplace. That's really the key, and I'll explain here why in a minute. So what the program does is it gives all Oregonians access to a Roth individual retirement account. So if you're unfamiliar with a Roth IRA, we sort of just describe it as a long-term savings account that you're meant to withdraw from after the age of 59 and a half. So it's really supposed to serve you kind of in your later years or kind of after your career comes to an end. With the Roth IRA, you can contribute up to $6,500 per year or $7,500 if you're over the age of 50. Now, what is unique to a Roth IRA, say, as opposed to a 401k, is that because you're contributing with after-tax dollars, all of the earnings or interest you make on your account are completely tax-free as long as you are over the age of 59 and a half and the account has been open for 5 years. So let's say I've been saving for 30 years, I'm 65 years old, and I want to start withdrawing from this account. If I have $250,000 in this account, that $250,000 is mine to spend without worrying about tax implications because I've met those requirements. So that's a brief overview of a Roth IRA. So as I mentioned, the key here is that folks can save for retirement in the workplace. And so there is an employer role within the OregonSaves program. So the same legislation that created OregonSaves also said that by July 31st of this year, all Oregon businesses that don't offer a workplace retirement savings option must facilitate OregonSaves. So in other words, if your business doesn't already offer a 401k, 403b, simple IRA, or SEP IRA, you need to be facilitating OregonSaves. So while employers do have to offer something, participation is completely voluntary for employees. They get to decide if and how they participate in the program. So naturally, I want to take just a quick minute to kind of explain why this program was created. So the real driving factor was sort of this retirement savings crisis, impacting the state, impacting the nation. 25% of folks have no retirement savings at all. Even among those that are saving, a significant portion feel like they're not really on track to retire the way they'd like to, or don't feel great about their savings. So as we were thinking in this state, how do we solve this problem? We did a ton of research with partners and learned that workers are 15 times more likely to save for retirement if they can do so through their employer. In other words, if it can just be another paycheck deduction that you sort of just become accustomed to, it's really easy. It takes all of the thinking out of it. And unlike, FICA or Social Security, where you kind of don't really know where it's going, I like to say it's going into your other pocket. You can check the balance of your OregonSaves account on a daily basis and see the money transferring from one account to the other. And then finally, we feel like this program's having a ton of success via surveys. Oregon was actually the first state to launch a program like this, and now there are 16 states with statewide retirement savings programs. So it's doing well, catching on, a lot of folks saving. But yeah, that's kind of the why behind that. And by the way, feel free to stop me at any point with any questions. Feel free to throw them in the chat. My plan is to stop at the halfway point to answer any questions, but if there's something urgent you feel you want to get clarity on, please feel free to stop me. I think we have the time. So as I mentioned, because of the employer role in the program, we wanted to make sure that we baked in some really important employer benefits. So the first is that there is no cost to facilitating OregonSaves to employers. We know that that was actually the #1 barrier to facilitating a retirement savings program, particularly for small businesses. So it is free, there's no cost. Employers also take on no fiduciary responsibility, meaning employers are not responsible for managing or preserving their employee savings, investments, things like that. The employer's role is just to facilitate the program, meaning every time you run payroll, put the predetermined amount folks want saved into their OregonSaves Roth IRA. Let's see here. So to kind of, specify a little bit more of the employer responsibilities, it's really just registering by the deadline. And then the next two are sort of the part of that registration and onboarding process. So you create a profile, you set up your payroll account, which I'll walk you through, and then you add all of your eligible employees to the system. And then the most important part, obviously registering is one thing, but then the thing we're really kind of making sure is happening is the regular contribution. So really baking it into your payroll process. So every time you run payroll, making sure the contributions happen. What employers are not responsible for is business contributions. So with OregonSaves, there is no employer match. And again, that is to keep it simple. That is just your role is to facilitate. Employers are not responsible for providing financial advice or processing withdrawals. So if an employee says, hey, how should I invest my money? Or I'm going to retire, help me take my money out. That does not flow through the employer. That can be done online. You can call us, you can mail us a form. That is not on the employer's plate. So yeah, just wanted to highlight that step there. So now to talk about eligible employees. So the program is available to part-time or full-time or part-time employees who are 18 or older, work in Oregon, and have a Social Security number ITIN. I do also want to mention that Oregon has a large population of seasonal or temporary workers. So if an employee works for you for more than 60 days, they are eligible to be entered into the program. So 60 days within a calendar year is sort of the cutoff there. So I'll be referencing this again, but I wanted to kind of show it on the front end just for your framing as you're sort of thinking about the program. So once a business registers and completes the onboarding process, all of your eligible employees will be notified, hey, your employer signed up for OregonSaves, and the employees have a 30-day grace period to decide if and how they want to participate in the program. So OregonSaves is an opt-out program, meaning if an employee doesn't want to participate, they have to actively go in and say, hey, I do not want to participate. I do not want deductions from my paycheck. So if they sort of ignore it, if they forget about it, they'll remain enrolled, and then they'll start to see those paycheck deductions every time they run through via the employer. They can opt out at a later time, but they will see that first paycheck deduction if they forget about it. So I'll mention this again, but I think this 30-day, it can behoove the employer to really give their employees a heads up saying, hey, I'll be registering. You might get an email or a letter just to avoid getting questions, confusion, things like that. So assuming an employee wants to participate, or again, they forget and automatically remain enrolled, what happens? So the standard enrollment process is that every time the employer runs payroll, they'll take 5% of the employee's gross earnings and put it into their Roth IRA. Every year, the contribution rate will increase by 1% until they reach 10%. And then naturally, to get the biggest bang for your buck, the highest ROI, the money in the account is invested. For the first 30 days, it's in a capital preservation money market fund, but it'll spend the majority of its lifetime in a target date retirement fund. Now, that is the standard enrollment. That is where the vast majority of folks live within the program. It was meticulously studied. We feel this was a good point and it seems to be working well. But at any point, someone can customize their account. They can decrease, increase their contribution rate. They can suspend the auto escalation, jump right into another investment option, designate beneficiaries. If you move, you can manage personal information. And as I mentioned, at any point, you can opt out. Maybe the time's not right, and opting back in is equally simple, just a few clicks and you're back in the program. So a lot of flexibility there for employees. Understanding that kind of finances and financial returns is kind of complicated. The message we're really trying to drive home for employees, and our team goes over these details more in our Saver overview. We have webinars online that you can send your employees to if they want to learn more. We talk a little bit more about kind of how this affects your paycheck and the investment options and so on. But generally speaking, we just are encouraging folks to save, as much as possible. The more you can save, the longer you can save, the better. If you can save $50 for 10 years, you've contributed $6,000, but come out with almost $9,000. If you can do $250 for 40 years, as soon as you can, you've contributed $140,000, but come out with almost $400,000. That again is tax-free dollars if you've met those requirements. So just want to highlight that just to kind of highlight the potential financial returns of the program. So I'm at the halfway point. So I'm going to check the chat and answer any questions. Feel free to just call it out if you have it, but I see so John asked about the rate of contribution. So the standard rate of contribution is 5%. Great question.
So I have a few questions if now's a good time.
Yeah, please.
So one, and the timing of this is good. So you mentioned there is no employer match. Theoretically, employers could match, right? There's nothing that precludes them from doing that. They could match if they want to do that, right?
Not with OregonSaves. The system will not allow you, and that, sorry, I'm letting someone enter. The system will not allow you, and that's sort of to mitigate or lessen sort of ERISA compliance that then creates other, requirements for the program and for employers. So no, there is no employer contribution. If they wanted to, they could then choose to move to a 401k and go that route.
Okay. All right. The next question, again, these are just things that pop to mind.
Yeah, please.
This doesn't apply for my specific situation, but it may for some. You said that it was 1 or 2 employees.
Yes.
If theoretically someone had like an S corp or a C corp, and they are the only employee, they need to be aware of that and register themselves, right?
So yes, that's a great question. So, and yeah, sorry, I meant 1 or more employees, just to be, just to clarify. But yes, so if you are the owner or part owner, depending if it's a partnership or something like that, if you essentially have ownership in the building, or sorry, in the business, you can exempt yourself. So if you are the 1 employee, but don't have W-2 employees, or are a W-2 employee, but also the owner, you can exempt yourself from the program. And I'll walk you through how to do that as well. Did that make sense?
Yeah. So single, if it's, if you're an owner or a partner and you obtain a W-2, you can exempt yourself from this. Okay. All right. I was just curious.
Proprietorships, partnerships, but it's just, for example, if I'm the owner of a business, but then hire 2 folks who have no ownership stake and receiving W-2s, they need to be offered the program.
So part of this also is, this is a timely discussion actually for me, because I received a notice this morning. It was an email notice saying that an employee had opted in.
Oh, great.
I'm actually wondering though, there's a good probability that was just benign neglect on that person's part. So I'm going to just clarify that. So let's just say you're in that situation where it was in fact just benign neglect. Is it incumbent at that point on the employee to reach out and then adjust it as they so desire? But in other words, I think I probably need to follow the directives from the OregonSaves emails, correct?
Yes. So if you have an employee that, for example, let's say you registered and you offered it to employees and they initially opted out, but then, an employee changed their mind and said, yep, I actually want in now, I'm ready. Then at that point, yeah, it would be incumbent on you to essentially, then begin those payroll contributions.
My last question here. So I am just everyone's sort of in a different place with this. Just my specific situation is I deposit federal withholdings monthly, but Oregon state withholdings only quarterly. Does this change that requirement?
No, so these would just process with these would are meant to fit right into the payroll process. So they would be every time essentially you cut paychecks.
Right.
So
So that would
separate of taxes.
right. Well, so I say that because right now with withholdings, I withhold the money and I only deposit it quarterly.
Gotcha. I see.
So I probably need to move to a each page because
Yes.
it puts you in a each paycheck sort of withholding reconciliation process at least for this.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. It would.
Okay. All right. I was just I it's just something I'm processing this morning
Sure.
because that's the first time I've seen it. So thank you.
No, and absolutely. And hopefully when I walk you through the payroll facilitation, and one of our priorities right now, which I'll get to, is payroll integration. So maybe that also clarifies there a bit too.
So I have a question. I know that the employers that have a retirement program already, they can file a document to exempt themselves, and you're going to probably talk about that.
Yep.
I'm kind of curious though, if an employer wanted to give an employee the opportunity to stack the OregonSaves on top of their 401k program, is that something that's available?
So essentially facilitate both.
Yes.
So it is an option. We do recommend, just sort of for the employer's sort of sake and facilitation. So OregonSaves has a self-enrollment option. So you can essentially do it outside of the business place and contribute through your personal bank account. So yeah, it's not, just to kind of minimize employer burden. We don't mention it too far, but yes, it is an option where you could facilitate both.
Well, and what I was trying to get at is there are limits to what you can contribute to a 401k on an annual basis.
Right.
Right. So does this open a new opportunity for an employee to also have 6,500 or 7,000 in a Roth contribution each year?
So a Roth IRA does have more strict income limits, for example. So I believe they are lower than they are for a 401k. So for a for a Roth IRA, a single individual can't make more than 144,000, or as a joint filer, they can't contribute more than 208,000. So it has those considerations. And also, you can save for a 401k and a Roth IRA, to answer your question, if you're eligible.
Thank you.
But
Yep.
Renzo, can I just rephrase what I think I heard? The main point is that there's no introduction of any new investment vehicle with this. This is basically an administrative layer on the existing Roth IRA rules. And the question about how much and where and how you can contribute to that and how it integrates with things like 401ks and 403bs, none of that changes. This just gives you a new avenue for your employer to facilitate your direct deposits. Is that about right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And one question did come in the chat that I want to read and just answer. So if an employee is part-time and lives in Washington State, how does it work? Does it matter if she is in a different state? So the big thing to keep in mind with that is if they receive an Oregon W-2, then they are eligible. So for example, they can live in Washington, but if they work in Oregon and complete some of their work in this state where they're likely receiving a W-2, then yes, they would be eligible. But if they, if your business is based here, but they work solely in Washington and do all of their work there, maybe not. So again, it kind of depends on the work they do and kind of where they're considered to reside and also work. All right, so now I'm going to jump into the registration and facilitation process, just so you can see sort of how the system works and get familiar with it from there. So the easiest and most straightforward way to do that is to head over to OregonSaves.com. Midway through the page, you'll see an employer box and it'll say register your business. I do want to flag here that this is also where you could go, and we recommend you go to exempt yourself if you either offer a retirement plan already, or as we mentioned, you are the owner of your business with no W-2 employees. And the reason why the exemption is important, and one of the things we're trying to stress if you offer something, is we sort of look at it. There is a tax form where you can 5500 where you can say, hey, I offer something, but if it hasn't been filled out or sort of out of date, we essentially don't know what you're facilitating. So this lets us know, hey, I offer a program currently. So it's kind of important we just say, so we just stop nagging you and reminding you about a program that you're essentially already facilitating. So the exemption is an important step. So you'll head over to register your business or certify your exemption there. So there are 2 bits of information that you'll need from the jump that I like to flag just in case you're setting aside some time to work on this, so you don't kind of hit a wall on the first step. The first thing you'll need is your business FEIN number and then an OregonSaves access code. We have sent this to all businesses. Depending on the size of your business, you may have received this a while back, if not more recently. If you can't find it, if you've misplaced it or it's just been a while, you can contact us and we'll give you that 6-digit code immediately so that you can get going with the process. So those are the 2 bits of info you will need to get the process started. So from there, you will create a profile. So you'll establish or kind of designate which email address you want to use and create a password. We do recommend using an email that is monitored. Again, sometimes we send out emails like, hey, we are now working with this payroll provider where you can seamlessly transfer information. Or if you reach out to us with an issue and we want to follow up, this would be an email we do it at. So just keep that in mind. So once you've done that, you've created a profile. I want to stress that while this is an important step, we've had folks kind of think like, wow, that was the easiest registration in the world. It took me 30 seconds. I'm done. That's not quite it. We recommend signing in immediately and jumping right into the rest of the onboarding process. So then what you're doing is just, entering your company information, any DBAs, confirming any mailing address, where you'd like to receive mail, things like that. And then sort of step 2 in the payroll process, in the onboarding process, is setting up payroll. So the first question is just letting us know if you work with a payroll provider. And this just lets us know, hey, we offer a payroll integration with this payroll system. Feel free to use it. But if you do everything in-house, spreadsheet, manually, that's totally fine. Again, the system's just kind of intuitively trying to help you out with your process. And then you'll set up a payroll schedule where you can name it whatever you want, put in the frequency. And this is just so the system can kind of keep you on track. For a lot of folks, this is the first time, and so they might need a reminder. And so the system will email you and say, hey, you said you run payroll every 2 weeks, reminder to facilitate OregonSaves. And it's not shown here, but right underneath Save Pay Schedule, there is a button that says add another pay schedule. So if you have some folks that are hourly, but some folks that are salaried and get paid monthly, the system can handle 2 different pay schedules. And again, we'll just keep you on track. And then you will link it to your payroll account. So in most cases, this tends to be the payroll account that you use to actually pay employees. And there are 2 ways you can set it up. You can set it up securely through Plaid, which is basically you just log into your account one time and it extracts the information it needs. I want to clarify here that that information is just a routing number and account number. It is not looking at transaction history. It's not looking at other personal information. We're just capturing the bare minimum there. And to be sure, if you want to enter the information manually, all we ask is your routing number and your account number. So you can do it either which way. And then the third step in the onboarding process is adding those eligible employees. So again, they need to be 18 or over, full-time or part-time, social security number ITIN, and they need to work in Oregon. So again, receive an Oregon W-2. Depending on the size of your business, if you only have a handful, entering it manually might just be the most straightforward way. Or you can upload a file if you have like a roster or, QuickBooks download something for you, that's totally fine. One thing I want to mention here too, as you can see on the right-hand side, email address is not required, but it is recommended. The reason being is if you do enter an email address, they'll receive notification that they've been enrolled within 48 hours, maybe 24. If not, they receive a mailing. And I think we all know at this point, mailing it might take a while to get to you and can kind of eat into that 30-day grace period. So just something to keep in mind. If you have an email and, kind of a business email that everyone already receives, you can enter that one, totally optional. And I want to mention here too, that if you do upload a file that has way more information than we're requesting, that's totally fine. The system will ask you to essentially pair information to what is needed. So if we're asking for social SSN, but your header says social security or something else, you can say, hey, pull this information from there, and it sort of links up accordingly. So totally fine if your system has more information. And then once you add the employees, you'll get this banner that says, hey, 2 employees added, onboarding complete. And you've completed the onboarding process. So this is effectively what triggers that 30-day grace period that I mentioned earlier. So at this point, everyone you've entered would either receive the email or the letter saying you've been enrolled. Again, we recommend giving employees a heads up. And I do want to say that we fully understand employers might not feel comfortable walking through the ins and outs of OregonSaves with savers. If you want help, you can always reach out to us. We host monthly webinars online, but we can come and do something specific to you in person, online. Our website has a ton of information, but we're basically just saying we're here to help and happy to be supportive. A few just kind of additional features that I want to highlight real quick are that we definitely recommend kind of one person go through the flow, but if you have a record keeper, payroll, HR person that you want to help you with this, you can add an administrator in the portal. You'll just need to enter their email address, have them register, and then they'll have full administrative access. So they'll essentially be able to do everything that you can do. So before I go to the actual payroll portion, and that's my last stop, I just want to see if there are any questions, none in the chat, but I'll sort of stop there with the registration before jumping into the how to submit payroll stuff. Sweet, I will jump right in. So again, this is the kind of the important part in terms of transferring the money into folks' accounts. So you've created a profile, now you just sign in, enter your credentials, and then you'll be taken to the contribution dashboard. First time around, this page will be pretty blank, but as you enter more, you'll see a larger transaction history, more information. But step 1 is essentially to head over to start contribution. Here you will see it'll be pre-populated. You'll see all of the people that have chosen to remain enrolled in the program, and you'll see their determined contribution rate. So people have changed it. So as you can see here, Frank chose to stay in at the 5%. Francis chose to drop it down to 3%. So then your role as an employer here is to just calculate what is 5%, 3% of their gross and enter that number. Obviously, the system doesn't know how much they make, so the employer has to enter this. So you can be done manually, or again, you can upload a file that has this information. If you can see it, it's pretty small, but there's a little button at the top that says copy from last date. That won't be there the first time, but it'll be there every subsequent time. It'll just copy information from the last transaction. This is really only helpful if your employees get paid the same amount every time, typically salaried employees, but meant to just be a helpful feature.
Can I interrupt,
Yeah.
Renzo, just with a quick question? So what you're showing us right now, I'm assuming that this is if you're entering the information, you're making the contributions yourself manually. I'm assuming that if you have one of the payroll processors like Quicken or someone like that, they will facilitate this for you. Is that correct?
Sort of. Well, most likely. So our payroll integrations are where, like, let's say you're using QuickBooks. Let's say you're a small business and you're just using QuickBooks yourself. The integrations I'm referring to is essentially in your deductions tab within QuickBooks, you would enter this OregonSaves line, or there's a tab, and you would be able to just hit submit and it would transmit all of this information to us. So you would never have to go into our portal. So that's an integration that's there. If you outsource your payroll or have a payroll provider who tends to do your taxes and stuff like that, then most likely they would help you out with this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I took from what you're saying that if you have the payroll module of Quicken or QuickBooks, whatever it is, that then you probably have that integration already, but you'd want to check that.
Exactly. And I'm going to walk you through. I mean, it's definitely, like I said, our priority right now, but we're not working with all of them. We're, again, building this out, but it's still not the most comprehensive. I mean, I think there are maybe, there are a lot of payroll providers, so it would depend on how big or small yours is. But, and I'll highlight the few, the ones we're working with now, and we're building out more. So again, if you upload a payroll file that has more information than we're asking, that's fine. You'll just have to designate what information you want. And then, once the information is in there, this send and validate button in the bottom right corner will illuminate blue and you can submit. Now, if for whatever reason there is an error, let's say the document you uploaded has a different social, or also the system, if you are contributing an amount that is more than the 6,500 someone is allowed to enter, the system will intuitively tell you, hey, they're at their cap, you can't pass it. So it'll tell you what's going on and allow you to fix it. So just wanted to clarify that. If all is well, you'll be taken to this review submission page where you can see the total amount to be deducted, how much each person is getting, this and that. You can edit from here, submit. If all looks good, you would hit complete submission and you'd see this page that it's processing, and you'd also receive an email saying, payroll contribution, good to go, process, and you can keep this for your records. And then just a few other little things. And I think, for example, this goes to Mark, what you were saying. So let's say an employee decides to enroll or change their contribution rate. The system will tell you, someone has changed their contribution rate. And this is something you would go in and look at just to, again, possibly make changes in your payroll system if you're doing this manually. If we have this integration, then it would just happen automatically. But again, it kind of depends on your situation. Nevertheless, you get a heads up to know that there's been a change. And then here are our payroll integrations as of this moment, again, with the priority being building out more. But here are some of the few that we're launching out. And again, this is what it would look like in the system. There's a payroll integration page where you would just connect to your provider. You would log in one time and then you're good to go. I've seen it. It's tremendously simple. You just do it within your payroll provider and it transfers the information. You don't even really need to log in. Okay. So final thing here is within the portal, we have this really great and robust help center that has step-by-step guides, videos on pretty much everything I just said. In case you forget it, has some additional factors if you want to add two-step verification, if you want to understand employee status, modify it. It has everything. Like if I forget something, I come here to get the refresher. Like it is a great resource. So there's the link, but it's also within the portal. And then, again, I'm just kind of highlighting out that we think this program is working well. Like I said, Oregon was the first state to do this. Now many are following suit. Oregonians have saved more than 200 million. We have thousands of employers participating, getting good feedback. So we hope you'll consider it. And if you need help, we are always here. Happy to help out. And then really the final thing I'll leave you with is just keep in mind, yeah, you're right. I need to change that to 1 or more employees. But the deadline is July 31st. So it's coming up quickly. So we appreciate your help your opportunity to talk about it and any help you can give us in sort of spreading the word. So with that, I will take any questions.
Looks
I'm
like
going to see
one
one
in
came
the
in the
chat.
chat. If all employees opt out, is there anything? No. So if all employees opt out, you do not need to facilitate. Yeah, so it's totally fine to remain. You wouldn't exempt yourself. You would just kind of leave the program idle until an employee possibly decided to join, and then you need to kind of go back into the system and facilitate. Great question. Any other questions before I let you go?
For any new employee that you hire from that point moving forward, you would then just add them to this program manually?
Correct. Yeah, and you have 60 days to do so from their hire date. Yep. Anything else?
And I think that that's, correct me if I'm wrong, they're only eligible if they're above the age of 18, right?
Correct. 18 or older. Yep. And so if there's nothing else, I'll just leave you with, Oregon Saves is one of the 3 state programs that the Treasury oversees. We also oversee the Oregon College Savings Plan if you're wanting to save for your kids' higher, family members, higher education, trade schools, universities abroad. There are many options, apprenticeships. And then we also oversee the Oregon Able Savings Plan. That is a savings account for folks with disability that does not that preserves and protects any financial or state assistance they're receiving. So truly a life-saving account. So yeah, with that, just a big thank you to all of you for having me again. Meryl, thank you for setting this up. I hope I answered any questions, but if you have any follow-ups, if things pop into your head or you need help with the registration process, feel free to reach out. Check out our website. I think it's pretty helpful and robust, but yeah, I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Renzo. We have the recording, and so we'll post it on our website and make it available to our members. And I'll add your contact information as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was super helpful.
Yeah,
Really
very
appreciate it.
helpful.
Take care.
Thank you.